Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to Right Lock Farm. This evening we'll be talking about clean heating and cooling. I'm Susan McPhee, and I'm the Winchester Energy Conservation Coordinator, and I'm also a volunteer at the farm here. We're fortunate to have Erica, who's our new director here, and a really great panel of people who are experts on clean heating and cooling. So I'm happy to welcome Loie Hayes from Green Energy Consumer Alliance, Steve Jaslowitz from National Grid, and Ken Pruitt, who's the Winchester Sustainability Director. So we'll have a brief presentation by each of these three experts, starting with Loie, and we'll follow that up with, I've got a couple questions and whatever questions you might have for this group. So just to kick it off, I want to welcome you to a building that is all electric. We have no fossil fuels here on the farm, except for the tractor. We haven't figured out how to have an electric tractor yet. But the farmhouse is off of oil and is all electric. This building is all electric. You can do it. If the farm can be net zero, you can be net zero. This is the only way we're going to get across the finish line and provide our children and our grandchildren with the kind of climate that we enjoyed. So with that, I welcome Loie if you want to pull up your presentation.
Maybe you have to stop.
Do you have to go to source?
It should take over.
I have to go to source.
Isn't that funny? It did
It
a
might
minute ago.
require you guys to stop, sorry.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Great. Thanks so much for coming out. Can you hear me okay? Great. I am the Energy Efficiency Coordinator at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. We've been around for 40 years. We're a nonprofit all about using consumer power to push the transition to a fossil fuel-free future, a fossil fuel-free present tense if possible. So about heat pumps, we all have one in our house already. It's your refrigerator. It is using a refrigerant. It is, that refrigerant absorbs the heat of whatever cooked food you put in your refrigerator. It holds onto that heat until it gets down to its little fan, and then it pushes it out into your kitchen. Same thing with your air conditioner, only a heat pump can work in reverse. This doesn't go all the way. Oh, well, anyway. Oh, I'm in my PDF. That's all right. So you may have heard heat pumps don't work well in a New England climate. That was before we had cold climate heat pumps. They now work down to -13. They come in all sorts of forms. You can have a whole home heat pump. You can have a ductless heat pump, as we're experiencing right now. A ductless heat pump that's coming up through the, a ducted heat pump, so sorry. Ductwork is bringing it to all these registers. Or you can have a ductless, which is in the illustration that you're looking at. Again, whole home or just part of your home, and air source or ground source, also known as geothermal. What's it cost? Well, for a small single head system, might be just $6,000. Put a single head in your great room and you're all set. If you want a centrally ducted system in an average size house, $15,000 to $25,000. Could be more than that if you have a large house or a house that needs a lot of has a large heat load, which is the amount of heat needed to keep it comfortable in the middle of winter. You can think of it as in cost roughly comparable to replacing your heating system and an air conditioning system. You will need a 200 amp service, more than likely, unless you have a very small economical, electricity sipping house. You'd need a 200 amp service. To help pay for that, there is now the federal tax credit, which has been expanded. It used to be $300, and that was, you could only take it once in your lifetime for one measure. Now you can do a new thing every year, take a new energy efficiency tax credit, and for a heat pump, it's $2,000. For a heat pump water heater, $2,000. There is a limit how much you can take per year. I think it's $3,200. There are smaller credits for upgrading your electrical wiring, things like that. And as I said, there's no lifetime cap where there used to be. What about the federal rebates, you say? Well, we love the fact that there are federal rebates, but they're not yet ready for prime time. We don't expect to see those until November or later. There are going to be two types of pardon me, rebates. One, the HOMES program for all income levels. This is going to be based on your projected energy savings, so you'll need an energy professional to come in and measure your whole heat, your whole energy use, and how much your project would reduce it. Then the HERA rebate will be for incomes that are moderate or low income, and that is defined as 150% of area median income. We're guessing that in this Metro Boston area, 150% of area median income is going to be $200,000. Hold on to that for, check that with the details when the program actually comes out. That will be based on specific measures. So a single house could get a heat pump water heater, upgraded your electrical, up to, I think it's $14,000 for a low-income house, I believe, in a single year. So those are all great things. They are just for owner-occupied properties. These are not for rental properties or second homes, just for your primary address. And as I said, the federal government has outlined the broad strokes of it, but all the states have to create a specific plan, and that's what's taking the time. The plan has to be created, all the stakeholders, these guys, us, et cetera, involved, and then the feds have to approve it, and then money has to be transferred, and people have to be hired, et cetera. That's why it's taken so much time. Now, the other big thing for heat pumps is the operating cost. So everybody wants to know, am I going to save money if I switch to heat pumps? Nobody knows for certain, but there are some things that you can take into consideration as you're trying to figure this out for your particular home. Efficiency of the equipment, temperature that it's operating at, and the fuel cost, what you're switching from to what you're switching to, which is electricity. Now, first, let's think about the temperature. This is 10 years of the heating season data. So the number of hours in that, roughly 8 to 10 month heating season that are at a particular temperature from minus 15 to 60 degrees. And you see the largest number of hours are in that 30 to 60 range. So 80%, 78 to 80% of our winter, we're actually above freezing. That 20 to 30, we're below freezing. And that's important because heat pumps lose efficiency as it gets colder. The cold climate heat pumps continue to be efficient, above 100% efficiency, down to minus 13, but they do lose efficiency. Now let's take that heating season data, and you'll see it as a gray screen behind this somewhat complicated slide, and I'll stand up to point. So the gray screen is the hours, and now on the left, you have the annual cost. And each of the colored lines refers to a different color, a different heating fuel. So you've got propane at the top, then you've got electric resistance, then you've got oil in black. The blue is natural gas, the green is air source, and the orange is ground source heat pump. Ground source heat pump is more efficient than air source heat pump, so it's generally going to cost less to run. But as you see in that moderate range, there's not a lot of difference between it. And the big question is, what are you paying for heating? What are you paying for your fuel now, if it's natural gas or oil or propane? If it's propane or oil, you're likely to be able to save money with a heat pump. If it's natural gas, you may or may not, really depending on how those two fuels, how those two energy sources change over the next several years. This particular chart uses, I think you can see it, 14 cents per kilowatt for electric resistance, which is the 100% local green for Winchester at the moment. And for gas, it uses $2.32 per therm, which happens to be, somebody gave me their gas bill recently and I did a rough calculation. That actually, the natural gas is from January. and the electricity is from now, but it was true in January as well. So a lot of people don't have 14 cents per kilowatt hour on their electricity, and if you don't have Winchester electricity, you should, because it's a great product. And we'll talk more about that. So quickly on some design options, ducted or ductless. If you have ducts already, yes, you will probably use those ducts, and they will probably work for you. If the ductwork is just for your air conditioning, you're gonna need to have a professional come in to take a look at them and decide, oh, can that also be used for heat or not? But if you have hot air ductwork, yeah, easy peasy, drop that heat pump in, you're golden. Central air, you know, it's more questionable, but yeah, definitely they can. If you have a boiler, you'll have to go ductless for either a whole or a partial displacement. You can eventually perhaps get a heat pump that is a drop-in for your ductless and uses your existing radiators or baseboard, but not at present. Not unless you greatly increase the insulation level around your house. If you can do that, greatly increase your insulation level, then maybe the existing ductwork, the existing baseboard and radiators would be sufficient with current technology on the heat pumps. So let's look quickly at a very important question, which is the size of your heat pump. You don't want to buy too big. That's the most basic takeaway I want to say to you today. Don't buy too big. So let's look at this example of a 24,000 BTU heat load. There's a small apartment, it's well insulated, etc. In this illustration, you've got one 24,000 head in the living room. It provides enough heat and cooling to, you know, keep the whole house comfortable enough, but there's going to be a big differential between the living room and the bedrooms, 4, 6, something like that degrees. But this is basically what I have in my house. And we have ceiling fans in the bedrooms, and that does the trick. We also actually do have electric baseboard. That's how we bought the apartment. It had electric baseboard throughout, and we've replaced some of that with a heat pump. And now the heat pump does most of the work, but the baseboards are there in the cold winter, et cetera. So this is great for partial displacement of fossil fuel. Here is an example of too many heads in too small a space. So remember, this is 24K that we're talking about is the heat load. And in this illustration, each of these heads are 9K. That means we've got 36K happening. It's too much. It's too much. You're going to end up with expensive, and the equipment is going to be cycling on and off. Heat pumps like to just go steady, 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 steady. If you heat up and then cool down, heat up and cool down, it's just not going to be as efficient. And it's particularly problematic in summer because you're going to get cold, clammy rooms. You're going to get the cooling happening. It's going to shut off because the temperature gauge says, oh, you're cool enough. But there hasn't been adequate time for dehumidification, and that's not good, not good. So number one rule, don't buy too much capacity. Get a good heat load calculation of your home before you put in a heat pump. Perfect mix could be a mini ducted unit. Here you've got a ceiling duct, a ceiling cassette serving. So you've got a mini ducted unit hooked to a little ceiling cassette, and it's bringing that 9,000 split between those two rooms is just perfect. Oh yes, good. We can be just right cool. The machine will just be steadily working, not be overgoing, and it's smaller in the living room as well. And that's just about it. Green Energy Consumers has a heat pump program. You can reach us at, there it is, greenenergyconsumers.org. You can find me there. You know, this is a huge transition that we're doing, switching to heating without fossil fuels. We are here to help you find trusted vendors and sound advice. We're also trying to push the whole industry by having better educated people who say, no, don't upsell me your equipment. I only want 24K for my household that only needs 24K, and that type of thing. And This is one tool that we can connect you with Abode Energy Management. It's a quote comparison tool, and it's extremely valuable. We think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread in terms of for consumer protection. You can get 3 quotes, and as somebody was saying, you get the 3 quotes, and you can't make heads or tail of them. One guy's saying this, another guy's saying that, blah, blah, blah. This is side by side, all the same metrics, and very plain language. And one guy said to me, this was a game changer. I could not make heads or tails of these quotes. I looked at these and I knew immediately, by the time I had finished this 3-page thing, which one I wanted. So really great tool, and it's only $50 when you come in through our website. So we're really happy about that. And we have lots of webinars, and we're a nonprofit, and I'm happy to take questions at the end.
All right, next we're going to
All right.
hear from Steve Jaslowitz from National Grid.
See if I can get this to work. That's not me still.
Oh, that might still be me, I guess. I don't think so.
Ah,
There you go.
Okay. And okay. Can everyone hear me okay? This is my most exciting slide. They go downhill from here. So. My name is Steve Jaslowitz. I am a senior program manager at National Grid. And my job is to implement the Massachusetts 3-year energy efficiency program. This is done through the Mass Save program. And I work primarily on the residential programs in the heating and cooling area. You know, I feel like we're very fortunate to live in a state where, thanks to the leadership from our administration and our legislators, thanks to the engagement we have from our trade allies, you know, our contractors and manufacturers that operate in the state, and thanks to the support from communities like you and citizens who are here tonight to support this event, we support some of the most robust, ambitious, and innovative energy efficiency programs in the country. So Massachusetts is really a leader nationwide in these programs. We're on the cutting edge, and very proud to work in this and very grateful to be in a state that we really support these programs so effectively. And before I jump into Mass Save a little bit, you know, for the 3-year energy efficiency program, there's really 2 strategic priorities. The first is the electrification of homes and businesses, primarily through, you know, switching buildings from fossil fuel heating to electric heat pumps, but also through things like heat pump water heaters and even like electric lawn equipment, you know, all those things that help remove the fossil fuel usage at the individual building level. By doing that, we're really preparing our homes and businesses for a clean energy future where the grid can be powered less by fossil fuels and more by clean, renewable, and sustainable energy sources. So that's the first strategic goal. The second is to make sure that we're making these programs available for everybody, that we're not leaving anybody behind, and that energy efficiency just is not for affluent people who can afford to make these changes in their homes and businesses. So we're you know, implementing programs that really target hard-to-reach customers, English isolated communities, renters, income customers. So we're really looking at ways how we can reach everybody and bring everyone along with this on this journey with us. So just a couple things about our priorities here. And just a little about Mass Save. Mass Save is a collaborative with the utilities and energy efficiency providers that you see on the screen here. So myself and my colleagues from these other utilities collaborate and you know, brand the program under the Mass Save brand. But there's no Mass Save building, or nobody actually works for Mass Save. It's really the folks who work here and work in the energy efficiency departments to implement the plan. And the you know, the ratepayers who live in the town communities served by these folks, you know, you pay into these programs to support the energy efficiency plan. So you have some investment in this, So it's good if you can find ways to take advantage of it and help improve your home through that. And just here's an overview of Mass Save. It's really, besides my residential area, it operates in a lot of different areas, as you can see in the screen. You know, the left side is kind of sort of the different segments, you know, building types and building categories that we serve. And on the right side is some of the services and rebates that we offer. So we have heating and cooling, appliance, you know, weatherization. We do home business energy assessments, and we offer 0% financing. And this really isn't even the complete list, but just to give you an idea of sort of the size and the scope of the project. I cannot answer detailed questions about all of these, but I can certainly take things back if you have them and try to get answers for you. So let's get into our heat pump program a little bit. You know, our primary goal here is to try to, you know, as customers are working with contractors to make decisions for their home, to try to sort of meet them where they are in the marketplace and incentivize them to make energy efficient choices for their homes. So for the heat pumps, that's a big priority. We're offering, you know, large incentives to try to reach these goals. So what we're seeing here on the screen are the types of heat pumps, which Loy sort of referenced here. There's air source heat pumps, which are either ducted or ductless. Air-to-water heat pumps are kind of less, we see very little activity on that now. It's a rather new technology, but these can be used with existing hydronic systems. Like if you have a boiler with your water-based heat, hydronic baseboards and hydronic radiant floors and those kind of things. And then ground source heat pumps, where you're actually, you know, drilling holes in the ground and you're running loops under the ground to do the exchange of the heat. Instead of just using the air. And you can see our rebates over here. So the air source heat pumps and the ground source heat pumps come in two different categories. There's a partial home rebate, where you're not actually removing or disconnecting your existing central heating system. You're installing the heat pumps to work with that system. And those rebates are based on the capacity of the heat pumps that you're installing. So it's $12.50 per ton. Some people may install a 1 ton or even a half-ton system just to do a small area of their house. Some people may put in, you know, a 4-ton system to really do almost their whole house as a partial heat option. So the rebate will vary depending on the size of the equipment you put in. For a whole home solution, where you're really saying, I'm going to heat with these heat pumps throughout the winter season. They're going to be my sole source of heat unless there's some kind of a emergency or maintenance needed on the heat pumps. We offer a $10,000 rebate per home. So that's really a sizable rebate to try to help customers sort of overcome that cost barrier as they're looking at the heat pump options for their homes. And for the ground source heat pumps, it's slightly more. It's $2,000 per ton for the partial solution and $15,000 per home. That technology is more expensive, so the rebate's a little more expensive to compensate for that. Over on the right, you can see our enhanced amounts. Those are for our moderate income customers. Moderate income customers are considered folks who make between 61% and 80% of the state median income. And it also varies by the number of people in your household. But, you know, more people than you might imagine actually could fall into that category. So if you feel like you're close, or it's worth checking, and if you're talking with your friends and your neighbors, it's something to keep in mind. And we constantly remind our contractors to have people check to see if they fall into those categories. And it certainly works with our goal to make these accessible to everybody. I'm going to talk about these, some of the requirements and categories in a little more detail in the next slides. Here's kind of the general requirements for to get a heat pump rebate. You have to be a residential gas or electric account with one of the utilities or energy services providers that I showed on the first screen. Winchester, I think, is National Grid Gas and Electric, right?
No, Eversource.
Eversource Electric, okay. But regardless, you're not a municipal, so you're eligible for the rebates, no matter what the fuel type is your home. If you have oil and propane, it would ultimately be Eversource Electric, who is paying that rebate to you through the state funds. If it's gas, that would be National Grid. So we would be paying that rebate. It would just come from Mass Save, but just so you know who's supporting those various fuel types in your town. The heat pump must be listed on our qualified product list, and I have the link here. Our website's very easy to use. If you go to masssave.com, you can pick the residential section, and you'll be right down to the list of rebates available, and the heat pumps are right there. Now, not every heat pump is created equal. There are heat pumps that will perform better at low temperatures, that are more efficient, and so our list is based on meeting minimal efficiency requirements, so they know they're designed to be highly efficient, and their ability to heat homes in cold climates. So that's sort of where our list come from. And you can see the very specific requirements that we use to build the list on the site as well. But to take the guesswork on it, you or your contractor could just go look at that list and pick a system off it, and you qualify for the rebates. We also have a heat pump installer network. And so what we've done is we've asked contractors in Massachusetts to enroll to be a certified installer through the Mass Save program. Only folks who have enrolled, and the enrollment includes training on how to access our rebate programs and what these rules are, training on best practices to install, training and just like an agreement to help support post-installation inspections and be responsive to customers and other sort of best practices. So only those contractors can access, only installations that are done by these contractors are eligible for the rebates. So you've really got to choose from our list. The good news is we've had really incredible success building this list, and we have, I think, over 1,400 contractors in Massachusetts signed up. So the chances are contractors that you're looking at and working on are on the list. We have all types. We have huge contractors that serve the whole state, and we have small contractors that only serve a few towns. And our goal is not to police these guys and you're not obeying the rules. We really want to serve them and help them understand the technology, and help them to help their customers and our customers, adopt this technology and feel good and confident about it. The network also lets us, provide events for them, provide marketing for them, put them on the list. We want to provide advantages for them, and it helps us get specific messaging out to them in an efficient way when the program changes, or if there's things we need to highlight to them. So you need to have the equipment on the list, and you need to use one of our installers. The forms obviously need to be filled out and submitted, and we do post-inspections too on a certain number of projects. Most of those inspections can be done virtually, so you can just kind of walk around with your phone and show the equipment. So there's the general equipment. For the whole home rebate, there's some additional requirements. Weatherization is critical for heat pump performance. So if your house is not sufficiently weatherized, you're not going to have a good experience in the winter. And contractors will either oversize them, which we know is not a good idea, or they just won't work well, or you'll just spend a lot on electricity to run them. So weatherization, we feel, is really an important component of this. So we require weatherization. You call for a home energy assessment. We'll send a home energy specialist to your home. They'll assess what your weatherization needs are. You're required to complete those weatherization recommendations. There are incentives available for those as well. Typically, Mass Save will pay up to 75% of the cost for the weatherization. And once that's complete, you kind of check that box on the list and you're ready for the next step. A couple other quick things on weatherization. If your home's built in 2000 or later, you're exempt. The code has, the building codes from then on are enough to deem you as sufficiently weatherized. I would still recommend having someone come to make sure. It's a good idea. And if you've already participated in the home energy assessment program and already had the weatherization done, back to 2013, we can consider you weatherized too, so you don't have to do it again. Another requirement is the whole home heat pump verification form, and this is basically a form where you're testing that the system is sized to heat my house between 90 and 120% of the heat load in the winter, so it's been sized properly. You know, I've either removed my system or disconnected it, or I'm testing that I'm only going to use it in the event that the heat pumps are, you know, down for maintenance or you know, inoperable for some reason. And there's also language, I think, about your home's going to be occupied in the winter. So if you have a, you know, vacation home that you don't use in the winter, that's not eligible either. So the form's very important. The rebate will not be processed without the form. And this last note is just about the sizing. So those are the requirements for the whole home heat pump. Partial home, these are for if you're you know, supplementing the existing heat in your house. So you have heat pumps, but you still have your central heat system. And these are, you can also use it to just heat just part of your home. So if you have just a second floor, where you're gonna take your heating out on the second floor and just heat that with heat pumps, that's considered partial as well. That's the $12.50 per ton rebate I spoke about earlier. The requirements for this are, if you're using it in conjunction with your existing heating system, you have to install an integrated control. This is a device, and it could be like some dual fuel thermostats work, like a Nest thermostat or an ecobee thermostat may meet this requirement. It connects to both your existing central heat system and your heat pumps, and will run the heat pumps automatically without you having to touch anything until they reach a certain temperature. And then since it's a partial solution not designed for your whole home, your central heat will kick on below that set point. But those are a requirement for us because we want assurance that people are going to use them and not just manually switch between and forget to use the heat pumps until it's springtime. So we really want people need to really use them throughout the winter. Again, if you're fully replacing a section of your home, there's really no chance to integrate because half your home is going to be on your central system and the half will be on the heat pumps. So as long as that's documented on your contractor invoice, we can waive the integrated control in those circumstances. And if you have a room that had no heat before and you're adding heat pumps, those are not eligible because you're not displacing any existing heat. You're adding to your electric load by adding heat pumps on. That situation too has come up a lot, and we're still looking. Does the plan kind of allow us some leeway to provide some kind of incentive there? In my mind, people are choosing heat pumps instead of something else, so that there should be something we can offer there. Currently, we don't, but that's something we're looking into. Just some heat pump resources. This masssave.com/heat pumps, like I said, it's easy to find, but that has all the general information about the program and you know, how heat pumps work. We have a no-cost heating and cooling consultation service. This has been really popular. You can go on and schedule yourself to talk with a heating and cooling specialist, completely brand and contractor agnostic. They can talk to you about the unique needs of your home, what's your existing fuel type and your heating system, your square footage, your age of your home. You can bring all that information to them and they can sort of make recommendations and help you get started. It's been a very popular service. The home energy assessments that I mentioned, our heat loan program is a 0% interest for qualified projects. So if your heat pumps that you're installing, if you have your quote from your contractor, you can fill out the heat loan intake form and you can get qualified for a 0% interest loan up to $25,000. So 0%, you can, that's a pretty good deal. Mass Save will pay the interest on the loan to your lender. There's a ton of banks in the network. So great tool to help finance these jobs if you're interested in something. We have a heating comparison calculator, so you can go in and put in your fuel costs and compare it to heat pumps. And you can also search for our participating installers, by name and by town. So just some resource available on the Mass Save site. The enhanced incentives I spoke about earlier, these are the moderate income. For moderate income customers, weatherization is done at no cost, and they do get the higher rebates available for customers that qualify. I'm going to cover this stuff quick. This slide's kind of a mess. We still do offer rebates for gas, oil, propane, and heating equipment. I know that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. We're phasing these out. They're only going to be available for maybe another 14 months or so. So we're not going to be continuing these definitely past 2024. But there's still, for some people, it's, at least they're using less of these fossil fuels if they take advantage of these during a short time period. We're requiring verification that someone's switching from a non-condensing system to a condensing system, so there is a pre-inspection required if you're interested in these. We have water heater rebates available as well. Our heat pump water heater rebates are a discount that we pay to the contractors at the time they buy it, and they pass that discount on to their customers. So you don't have to fill out any reborn. We're basically buying down the cost of the equipment at the distributor location. Customers can also purchase their own through Home Depot or Lowe's and get an instant rebate. There's coupons available you can get. So if you're interested in buying your own, you can get a heat pump water heater. Still offering some water heater rebates on fossil fuel equipment too. Those have drastically gone down, and those are being phased out as well. And just quickly, residential appliances too. We offer we have rebates on a lot of appliances that are Energy Star rated. So if you have an old inefficient dehumidifier, you can upgrade to a new one. The battery powered lawn equipment is a new, it's in 2022. So we've seen a lot of folks pick this up to $75 for a lawnmower. Maybe, I think the other ones are like $50, but again, I have an electric lawnmower. It's great, and you don't have the gas can. It's light as a feather. You can hang it on your wall. They're quiet, and it works. It sucks up the leaves and everything. So that's an exciting thing for us as well. So I know I went a little off on some of the other Mass Save stuff there, but just to cover it quickly, and I think we're saving the questions to the end. I hope I was under my time limit, and we'll pass it on.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
And last but not least, we've got Ken Pruitt, who is our Winchester Sustainability Director.
Thank you, Susan. Let's see if I can get this to work. Could you click on stop casting?
Yeah.
Like go to cast and click on. Looks like it's not doing it. So, is Erica still here? So it should be casting right now. Cast screen.
Go back to it.
Yeah, I think that's your screen.
You just close the browser.
Yeah,
I wonder if that'll work.
let's try that.
Yeah, that's not me. So let's try it again.
Whose is that? That might be,
Try yours now, Ken.
that might be your, is that yours or mine?
It's not mine.
It's not mine. Is it possible your computer's still?
It's the Google Cast, I think it's
Okay,
the device.
Can you try sources again?
there we go. Okay. Great, thanks. Again, I'm Ken Pruitt, the Sustainability Director for the town of Winchester. Delighted to see all of you here tonight. We're talking about clean heating and cooling in Winchester. Before I jump straight into heat pumps, just a few things to sort of provide context. Here we go. So, why do we even care in the Sustainability Department about the way we heat and cool our homes? Because as you can see, 63% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings in town. And of that, of our greenhouse gas emissions, 76% is on the residential side. So if you're living in a home in Winchester, you're likely contributing to the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the community. We have a climate action plan. Calls for reducing carbon pollution or greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050 from our energy supply, from buildings, from transportation, and from solid waste. and to increase the resiliency of the community in the face of a changing climate. So how are we going to reduce carbon pollution? 3 key things. Make buildings as efficient as possible by promoting building energy efficiency, by electrifying everything so that the only energy source we're using in town is electricity, and then to supply all of that electricity from carbon-free sources. So if everything's run on electricity and that electricity is carbon-free, you have eliminated greenhouse gas emissions. It's the basis for the entire state effort to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions, and most towns as well, including Winchester. So going just briefly back to energy efficiency, we were talking about that. It's really important to do that. When you think about heat pumps or any other heating source, you're basically dumping heat into your, or air conditioning into the inside of a building, and then it leaks out. The less efficient, the less well insulated your walls are, the more leaks there are, the faster that heat or cool in the summertime leaks out again, and so you want to reduce that leakage as much as possible. What do we mean by electrifying everything? It's not just heating and cooling. Heat pumps we're talking about tonight, but also hot water. Cooking, you can, even if you have a gas stove, next time you think about switching your gas stove out, consider an electric stove, including an induction cooktop. You can make your clothes dryer a heat pump clothes dryer. As Steve was just saying, you can have battery-powered lawn equipment, and with each step along that path, you're reducing your reliance on fossil fuels. And then how do you supply all of that electricity from renewable sources? Through the town's wind power program, launched in 2017, 20% additional, don't worry about class 1 RECs, 20% additional renewable electricity in the mix for you, which brings the total up to 42% renewable total if you're on Wind Power 100. So there'll be a link to that at the end of the page, but basically if you Google wind power, you can get there and sign up for 100% renewable. There's just some of the promotions that we've done for wind power. And you can also have solar panels on your roof. That's a different way to have renewable energy. Okay, and the main event is a case study of what I did at my house here in Winchester. That is my house. It is a 2,600 square foot mid-century modern split level. It's built in 1959, so not exempt from the energy codes that Steve was talking about by a long shot. I have an existing oil-fired boiler that produces hot water for baseboard radiators throughout the house. You can see an example, the boiler's on the left, the example of the baseboard radiators is on the right. That's my front entrance. I do also have central air conditioning through a high velocity mini duct system, which some people have. I basically don't have an attic, and there just was no good way to get full-size duct work throughout the house for sort of traditional central AC. So we put in these small diameter ducts that blow at a high velocity. So they're called high velocity ducts. On the right, in addition to those ducts, you see the air return, which is where the air is sucked back into the air handler before being blown out back again through the mini ducts. And that's a roughly 10-year-old system, the Unico air handler and a Bryant condenser, which is the machine you see outside. So what objective did my wife and I have? We wanted to save money by reducing or even eliminating oil heat in our house. Oil is very expensive compared to most other forms of heat. We wanted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in addition to that, we're planning a future bedroom in our basement, within the existing basement, but just to wall it off. That part of the basement currently doesn't have baseboard radiators and certainly no AC. So those were the objectives for the project that I'll describe. As Steve was mentioning, your first step, you have to get an energy audit through Mass Save. This was we did that. We've done 4 of them since 2010. Each time We then did recommended wall or attic, I said attic, but it's essentially a crawl space, a tiny crawl space, rounds of insulation. Because of the kind of siding we have on the outside of the house, we had to drill all the holes from the inside. What you see here is one of our rooms in the process of being repaired. First coat of paint is up. We're in the locations where the insulation was blown into the walls. Our audit this time was conducted by Homeworks Energy, which is located right here in Woburn. This time they identified 2 small areas that were lacking insulation, including the wall you see on this picture. And 75% of the cost of blowing in that insulation was paid by Mass Save, only 25% by me, so only $180. Since we've done this over in 4 different, every other year, basically for 4 years, we've had the entire home insulated at 75% paid for by the utilities, which we really appreciate.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's your money, remember?
Right, it is, it's all of this. Thank you, everyone, for the surcharge you pay on your utility bills. As Steve was mentioning, in order to get the rebate that I'll be describing next for the heat pump installation that we did, we had to have a receipt from a recent home energy audit and showing that we then did what the audit recommended, which was to insulate this area. So over 4 years, over a 2-year period, I went a little anal on this. I got 4 different quotes, different configurations, brought in multiple installers. It's difficult to retrofit homes heated with hot water baseboard radiators. I dream of the day when there'll be a drop-in air-to-water solution. The problem is there are air-to-water radiators. They don't make hot enough water. So when you have these itty-bitty baseboard radiators running around your house, you need really hot water coursing through them to pump enough heat into the space before it leaks out again, even if you're pretty well insulated. And the air-to-water heat pumps that exist just produce sort of pretty warm water, but not really hot. So we couldn't go with air-to-water. Nevertheless, we got a wide range of proposals for different configurations. I was initially adamant that I wanted to completely rip out our existing boiler and just have heat pumps in the house. That turned out to be a difficult and expensive proposition. Quotes ranged from $30,000 to $64,000 to do that in my relatively modest 2,600 square foot house. Sort of hit the wall on that, and then as a sort of last-ditch effort, brought in Muirfield, Muirfield Mechanical. They took a look at it and said, we can get you to 90% of the heating load. So, 90% of your heating will be covered, all of your AC, with a heat pump. It'll be enough, it'll cross that 90% threshold to become eligible for the $10,000 whole home rebate from the utilities. And then you can still retain the oil heat for emergencies. And it's also our source of domestic hot water for showers and laundry and that type of thing. So we decided to go that route. And the total cost was $18,000 for that central heat pump system, which serves the main floor and the top floor of the house, but not the basement.
So I was up before, and that was before the rebate, 18,000?
18 before the rebate.
Okay.
I had existing duct work, and I had, as you saw, and I was able to reuse the air handler for the central AC. So we went with a 3-ton Bosch condenser, which is the outdoor unit, to replace the 3-ton Bryant central AC condenser. Maintained the existing ductwork, maintained the existing 3-ton Unico air handler. Created 2 zones. One is the main floor, one is the bedrooms, controlled by Ecobee thermostats. So, I'm sorry, the $18,000 was the total cost of the entire project, sorry, including the next part that I'll mention, which you can see here. Sorry. So just the central the central heat pump part of the project, which is for the main floor and the bedrooms, total cost $12,000 before rebates. But that left out the basement, and we wanted to do the entire house. So we also got a ductless mini split for the basement, smallest unit you can get, 6,000 BTUs. And the cost for that system was $6,000, which brought the total cost of the project up to $18,000 before rebates. And we found we also still had sufficient capacity for all that electrical load in our existing 200 amp electrical panel. So the total project cost was $18,000. We have applied for the Mass Save Whole Home rebate, which is $10,000. Hasn't come in yet, but we see no reason why it wouldn't. We also plan to claim the $2,000 federal tax credit that Loie was talking about. And so off of the $18,000, that would leave us with a net project cost of just $6,000 for almost completely converting our home over to heat pumps. This is what the outdoor units look like, the condensing units. On the right, you see the central heat pump, and on the left, you see the condensing unit for just the ductless mini split in the basement. And they're both incredibly quiet, by the way. I find considerably less noisy than a traditional central AC unit, which is good because we have neighbors right next door, and it's very quiet. That's what the mini split head looks like in our basement. It too is just about silent. You can barely hear the air blowing out of it. This is what the controllers look like. That's the ecobee thermostat on the right. There's our mini split remote. Sorry, on the left, mini split remote on the right. And I'll just leave this last screen up. Some great resources here, including Green Energy Consumers Alliance on the bottom. My email address is at the top. We don't have a heat pump coaching program in town yet, although we're thinking about it. In the meantime, if you have questions coming out of tonight about anything that I've said, or are thinking about heat pumps for your home and want somebody to sort of point you in the right direction, happy to talk to you. Feel free to send me an email. That's it.
Thank you very much to our fabulous panel. And we'd like to open it up to questions, if anybody has any questions. Alan?
Yeah, my first question is, maybe first, is for Ken. I didn't quite understand, for the heat pump you got for the bulk of the house, not the basement room, you had this small gauge ductwork for the AC before.
Yep.
What does the heat go through? Those things?
Yes.
They're not too small for the heat to be able to use them also.
Nope. I was told by Muirfield Mechanical that it was sufficiently sized, again, to get me to 90% of heat, so it should be fine. The basement ductless mini split is plenty big to heat the entire basement and have some extra radiating up. So, yeah, even though it's the smaller diameter ducts, we haven't been through a winter yet, so we'll see, but it should, according to Muirfield, I think it'll handle it.
So you didn't install any new ductwork, it was what was there?
It was what was already there.
Great.
Yep.
Because I've used Muirfield, in fact, they installed a 6,000 BTU
Oh.
unit in our front end part of our house, they're great.
Yes?
Can you talk a little bit more about the cold temperature system, and do most people here in this area install that, and can reduce the cold temperature? And I guess for the 3 or 4 or 5 days a year where it goes below zero, I mean, does the temperature efficiency sort of go down linearly, or does it really fall off a cliff as you get to those cold temperatures?
Like I say, in my experience, for people installing heat pumps for heating purposes and not just essentially for AC, I'd be surprised if any installers are installing anything but modern cold climate heat pumps in Massachusetts. And if you want rebates, you have to have a certain level of efficiency. So I think they're sort of almost automatically, you're not going to, if you're going through a reputable heat pump installer, I think you're going to be getting cold climate heat pumps. There isn't a magical number where heat pump efficiency drops off to nothing as it gets colder. I mean, Loie can probably speak to this better than I can, but it does decrease over time. And that crossover point that they were referring to is the point at which it will be less expensive per kilowatt hour to heat with, natural gas, for example. But, if you're like me, there's reasons other than just strictly cost that I did my project. And so we'll keep running the heat pumps even when it's, probably significantly more expensive to be doing so compared to oil heat. But, grand scheme of things, it's not going to, break the budget.
I'll just add on our end, when we had that super cold day or two back this winter, the Boston Globe had on their Twitter thing,
Right.
tell us how your heat pumps worked, especially if that was your only source of heat. And it was like 90%, 6%, I think, of the people who responded said they worked great. So it was really an overwhelming, hey, this really worked. To us, that was like the big test, because we know they're rated this way, and we know that, contractors are putting these things in, and we're like, are they really going to work? And to get that overwhelming positive response was kind of the anecdotal feedback, at least, that they really work. And I think, Efficiency Maine also has some good information on their site. They've installed something like, 20,000 heat pumps. They've had the program longer than Mass in a colder climate, and they're getting excellent results there as well. So a couple things you might want to check into.
Yeah, and the technical information is available on all the machinery. So as soon as you get a model number, you can plug it into the internet. There's a great site, neep.org, where you'll get all the technical information, and it'll tell you at -5, it's going to be operating at 1.67 COP, coefficient of performance.
Right.
At 60 degrees, it'll be operating at 4.26 COP, et cetera. So you could compare 3 different models and know exactly how much it's going to drop.
One other follow-up, because I happen to have air source heat pumps. Imagine that. Mine are old, they're from 2011. And what happens is when they get less efficient, they just go to regular electric resistance. So it's just a one-to-one. It's no longer efficient, but it still does heat. So you don't lose heat, you just lose efficiency. Any other questions? Yes?
Where to start question? So Louis mentioned number one is don't go too big, don't oversize it. Are you relying initially on get 4 contractors and they're gonna give you quotes, they're gonna give you the size, or is there a way to sort of have a sense before the contractor even come in the door of what kind of size you might?
Yep, there's great internet tools now for a do-it-yourself estimating your heat load. And you could also hire a professional whose sole task is to do a heat load calculation, and that way you'd have an independent person to verify that.
Yeah, I got a quote from an engineer for $2,000 to do, it was called a Manual J, which is how they determine specifically how much heat you need in a given size and based on your level of insulation in the walls and things like that. But the internet tools, I think, will get you pretty close.
Yeah.
And the Mass Save Heating and Cooling consultation folks will help with that too, and they can give you some guidelines around that.
Any other questions?
Yes. I don't know if this makes sense or not, but we have these 4 units, one in each bedroom, one downstairs. It covers the living room, dining room, kitchen, and one in the den, because there's sort of drop top. We use it for AC. We haven't used it for heat. Well, yeah. That was just when we were working at home in the den. But what confuses me is that when we have the AC on, it works fine in the rooms, but like you get up, you go to the bathroom is really hot. So, in the hallways are hot. So if you're using it for heat, what happens to the pipes and stuff in the bathrooms? I mean, the bathrooms aren't gonna get heated then, if they're not getting cooled, they're not gonna be heated. Yeah, so how
Yep.
does that protect them from the cold or, how?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, the heat doesn't somehow magically get through the door, when you have a heat pump compared to some other systems. So, in an ideal world, if you already have central heat, which includes a duct that goes into that bathroom. I know you don't in this case, but you'd switch over to the heat pump and it would still heat everywhere just as your furnace does. In cases like the one you're talking about, the two main solutions I've seen people have is that they just leave the door open all the time when they're not actually using that room, so that the heat will percolate in from the conditioned areas. Or you can actually get, there's a couple different versions of essentially small through-the-wall fans that blow in there. The third is you can put in a little strip of electric resistance baseboard heating. And when you're talking about really small areas, like a little bathroom, having a little strip that at a certain temperature turns on and heats with electric resistance is really not going to cost that much in terms of the cost of electricity. In fact, a number of the installers that worked with me on my project said, well, if you could do heat pumps in these areas, this laundry room area is going to be really hard to get to, and we just recommend putting a little electric resistance strip there. If it's just a very small part of your house that you're heating with electric resistance, that added cost per kilowatt hour it sort of comes out in the wash.
The other option might be also to keep your old system in the background, so that's what I did. I have my old very efficient natural gas system, and then the cutover temperature that I think you saw maybe on Loewy's slides, they recommend 30 degrees. I have my cutover temperature at more like 25 degrees, so that then your fossil fuel system can come on in the background. So you can try the door open thing, but you can basically then offset, what did your slide say, 80 or 90% of your fossil fuel usage by doing heat pumps on top of fossil fuel. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I just think that's a good question too, because there's definitely, we see a lot of customers challenged with that. And if they have like pipes in their basement, do they, like with a central system, it's a little easier, but with a mini split, do you end up putting a head in your basement to do those things? It's just important to sort of work with your contractor, understand the unique needs of your house, and see what, solutions they recommend. But,
We sleep with the windows open in the winter, so I'm not sure how.
yeah, that's going to throw off your heat load calculation for sure.
Well, it's true, because our laundry is in the basement, so we haven't switched over to the heat, we just use the AC, as I said. So I never have to worry about it, but it might get cold down there, and I guess we're just using the split.
Again, a small electric strip that has a thermostat on it
This
would
is where
keep.
people come in to look at your house, they're gonna give you suggestions about it.
Yeah, a good contractor will look at all
And
that
there
stuff.
might be
yeah.
opportunities for insulation too, that can keep things, a bit cozy. Is there another question? Yeah.
Hi, we have a family farm in Fitchburg. The house is somewhere between 1730 up to 1750. It's about 2,700 square feet in size. It's a traditional colonial. You have a box, you cut it into floors. 4 rooms on the ground, house floor, four rooms, 4 bedrooms on the second floor. We have a situation because we have upstairs heating, which is called the triple up effect, meaning that there's vents in the floor, and that's basically how we get it. And it's definitely not adequate, you see the so, and I don't like the looks of the Mitsubishi things on the wall. So what would be like just off the top of your head, because I'm tired of chasing my tail around trying to figure this out, is I was thinking geothermal, maybe dig into the ground. I've heard it's very expensive to do that, but we also are on a hill which is known for ledge. So I don't know how far down I can do it to get that. Right now, we have forced hot air and normal system, and it's very old, and it's not efficient, it needs to be replaced. So before I replace anything, I just wanted to ask the panel, which direction should I go in based on this?
Well, definitely you have the forced hot air already, so that amount of capacity could relatively easily be replaced with a heat pump. Now so you would have, a heat pump air handler in your basement instead of where your furnace is. You'd have a condenser outside. and you'd have hot air coming out, the places where hot air is currently coming out. In terms of the second floor, do you have attic space above it? Huge attic, exactly. So you could put another air handler in the basement, in the attic, and run ductwork into the ceiling. Exactly.
And the cassettes that you were talking about, it's just like a small square on the ceiling. It's not the big box on the wall. So you might find that a little more,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, they're less
Exactly.
intrusive. They're,
Exactly.
you don't even notice them after a while, so it might be a good option.
Yep, and you'd have heating and cooling. You could have 2 different zones, so in the summer, you could, have more cooling
Yeah.
on the second floor. In the winter, you could have more heating on the ground floor. Right, exactly. You'd have increased comfort significantly.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.
One other note, for anybody thinking about ground source heat pumps, they actually love ledge. It's the same kind of drills that they use for oil drilling. So oil patch people are now moving into the ground source heat pump business. So the same people who brought us fossil fuels are now going to bring us ground source heat pumps. And the wells, for example, Stoneham is in the middle of building a new high school that's going to be 100% ground source heat pump. So they have drilled 48 wells that are over 400 feet deep. So it's like a well field. There are several houses in town that have ground source heat pumps. They actually prefer rock because if you drill through sand, it can maybe move around over time. So there's no, I haven't heard of any sites around here that are limited by the geology, let's put it that way.
Wow, interesting.
Any other questions?
I was interested in the tool that Chloe showed for comparing quotes. I'm wondering if any of you are aware of a similar tool for comparing like for instance, a new heat pump system in a given, configuration to, a traditional fossil fuel system, both in terms of like the upfront cost and then the ongoing
With the calculator.
cost of operation.
Well, we have the cost comparison calculator on our website. So, yeah, on the MassSafe website. So that can help. You can put in your fuel cost, the square footage of your home, and enter a bunch of other inputs, and it'll give you some idea on the cost savings.
You mean the operating costs?
The operating costs,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the operating costs.
How about upfront, just comparing like, if you needed to replace your system either way, you were wanting to, show that the heat pump replacement was not gonna be any more expensive, particularly with some of the incentives and whatnot that are available than going at traditional gas or oil route.
Right.
Is there anything like that that you guys are?
I'm not sure if we have something specific to
Getting
that.
a quote, I guess, for the
Right.
alternate
Getting a
system.
quote, yeah. And like I said, the heating and cooling consultation is a good place to just explain your unique situation, and they're good about talking about what a good solution might be for you.
Yeah, when you're getting down to your specifics, I think you need to get those quotes from contractors.
All right, great. Okay.
But then you have to take into consideration the incentives, of course.
And the contractor should hopefully know the incentives, but you might want to double check because I think Loie mentioned some of the federal incentives that we keep waiting and we're hoping they'll come out tomorrow and tomorrow. So when they start to hit, we're going to actually, people talk about like stacks of benefits. So there's going to be state plus this federal, plus you could do a heat loan and have no interest heat loan over. So there's going to be a lot of tools in the toolbox. And we still don't know exactly
Yeah.
when the IRA stuff is going to
Yeah,
start hitting
yeah.
that.
There is a
stack.
good website for getting from preliminary information about the federal tax credits and the federal federal incentives, federal rebates, sorry. And then it's called Rewiring America, rewiringamerica.com, I believe it may be .org, and they have a IRA, Inflation
Yeah.
Reduction Act calculator. You put in about 6 factors about your household income, number of people, location, and then they'll show you all the things that you're likely to be eligible for based on that.
Any more questions? Yes.
I really appreciate actually your discussion of what I'll call hybrid systems. And not only aware that actually I just bought a plug-in EV, pretty strong. I wanted to buy a full EV, but for a variety of reasons, we chose the plug-in line. And I can vouch for the concept of the fact that when you can run off electricity for 90% of your utilization, which is what we are experiencing, being retired and all that. We just never buy gas, even though it is a hybrid. So I'm intrigued by that. My question is, what's sort of the long-term life cycle of one of these hybrids, like you just built, Ken? 20 years from now, I'll take it as a round number. What then? I mean, you might need to replace your heat pump, 20 years from now, which, like you still will use the basic infrastructure of everything else that you built. But on the legacy system side, so where does it go from there? So if we were, because we've got an old house and lots of challenges to consider in a heat pump solution, and the hybrid probably would loom large for us, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, but I wonder about sort of where we'd be 20 years from now, and how does that really work? Any thoughts?
I do have a couple thoughts about that. I did think through that factor in terms of our project, because so now we're maintaining our old oil system going forward for emergencies and for hot water, although I hope to switch to a heat pump water heater to switch that part over. And now we also have the heat pump equipment to maintain over time. I think our oil boiler should last a lot longer because it'll be under a lot less use and pressure, since the heat pumps will be producing heat 90% of the time. But in terms of the switchover costs, the replacement costs will come for all these systems. One thing that comforts me a little bit is that we had to put a lot of time into sort of working with contractors to find just a system that would work, a configuration that would work. Now we have a configuration that'll work. We won't have to reinvent that wheel. And there'll be a lot of other work. The duct, we're not going to have to rip out the ductwork and replace it. There's already a space for the air handler. Someday that might need to be replaced. Replacing a condensing unit outside, I think most of the time these things will just need repairs. At some point we'll hit the wall and have to actually replace entire units, but having these complementary systems, the backup older fossil fuel and the newer heat pump, I think will mean that each of those systems can live longer, because they won't be trying to do absolutely everything on their own. But yeah, I will say, there's no question about it. Going to heat pumps, especially if you're retaining your backup fossil fuel system, it's complex. It introduces complexity, which is why I got 4 different installers. And I'll say something about installers. I think about 2 of them were they wanted to just come in and give a quick solution, sort of, sign on the dotted line, let's do this, sign here. And the other 2 really took the time to work with me and understand our goals and sort of stand there and ponder different rooms and that type of thing. And it was one of those 2 that I went with for the system.
Any more questions?
Just a general one, why is it called the Mass Save 3-year program?
The 3-year energy efficiency program, the energy efficiency programs run on a 3-year cycle. So we are right now in the halfway through the plan that takes us from 2022 through the end of 2024. And we just sort of kicked off our planning for our next 3-year program, which will be 25 through 27. And the plans change just in response to how we did in terms of meeting the goals of the previous plan. What are the new priorities for the next plan? And what are the things that are going to help us ultimately achieve the state goals of carbon neutral at some point, zero carbon, I guess. The we're really thinking the next plan is going to be really more, instead of an energy efficiency plan, it's going to be really more of a decarbonization plan. And I think we're going to be fully embracing that. I mean, already a lot of parts of it play into that. But that's why it's a 3-year plan. That's just the cycles that they work on.
If I can add to that, that we all as ratepayers pay for Mass Save on our energy bills, which these guys have alluded to. And so when that 3-year plan, when they're putting it together, we can actually all go testify on Beacon Hill and tell them what we want to include in the next one. So if you have a good or bad experience, they're willing to hear about it and incorporate those things. So this year's plan finally has, or I should say this 3-year plan, finally has all these incentives for heat pumps, which were missing from all the previous plans. And so we've been calling that out, people like Ken and Loie and me, saying we would like to have more support for heat pumps, for decarbonization, for that, the hot water heater that's an air source heat pump, things like that. Which, by the way, that's how you can get your laundry room to be warmer. You could have an air source heat pump, or actually that's going to cool it down in the summer.
Yeah.
Go backwards. Anyway, so the Mass Save program is really an interesting beast that not all states have. And I have to give Massachusetts a plug. We're number 2 in the country for energy efficiency, and it's because of Mass Save. So only California beats us. So hopefully if we can tweak the program and make it even stronger, maybe someday we'll pass California as the most energy efficient
Yeah.
state in the country.
For many years we did.
We've been number 1 before, yeah.
Anyway, so we do this all pretty well, but please take advantage of these programs. I mean, do the zero interest heat loan so you can maybe do the bigger project or, wring more carbon out of your system. That's what we did. We put in all our heat pumps with a zero interest heat loan. So,
It is up
over
to
10 years
50,000
we
if
paid
you
for
do pumps, yeah.
for our transition to electrification.
We're in right now, what is Right Rocks Farm?
I'm glad you asked. We covered that briefly before you got here. So you are in an air source heat pump, heated and cooled space. So the farm is very close to net zero. This is an air source heat pump. Because this building was purpose-built, it's a new building. You can see there are vents around the edge of the building. We didn't have to do cassettes because it wasn't an existing building. But the farmhouse that was built in 1820, sounds a lot like your farmhouse, had an old oil boiler that we've removed. It now has air source heat pumps, the cassette kinds that we've put throughout. We even took out all the old radiators. So that is an all-electric building as well. There are solar panels on the 2 big barns. So that offsets, there's 3 different bills here that Eric and I were just talking about. So we're 100% covered in the barns. The houses, most is covered, and then we're going to switch it around, and hopefully the solar will cover part of this. But we are all electric, no fossil fuels except for the tractor. So if we can do it, you can do it. Any more questions? Great, thank you everybody very much for coming.
Thanks, all. Thank you.